Well, Greenland's centre-right Democrats are in pole position for coalition negotiations, with the territory's election setting the opposition party up to become the largest in Greenland's next parliament. The territory's independence from Denmark and its potential annexation by Donald Trump has been two key campaign issues. Professor Matt Qvortrup is a senior research fellow at the ANU Centre for European Studies, and he joins me now from London. Matt, good to have you with us on the program today. Firstly, can you take us through the results of this election and explain who the big winners are and how the next government might look like?
Yes, the big winner is Demokraatit, which is a set of centre-right party. They would probably be sort of the far left of the Liberal Party in Australia, if you were to have it like that. And then there's Nalarak, which means the beacon, which is a party which is more sort of nationalistic, but also conservative. So Demokraatit is a very traditional centre social liberal party. They're in favour of Greenland's independence from Denmark, and Nalarak are too, but they're a little bit sort of more vocal in their claims and might have been a bit more sort of, if you like, nationalistic. And then the losers of the election is Inuit Ataqatigiit, which means the People's Party. Inuit means people, and that was a left-wing party. So, but all the parties are in agreement that Greenland is not for sale. But it's the relationship with Denmark, which is of which it is currently a part. Greenland has got the same sort of system of government as Scotland has vis-a-vis Britain. And the Danes haven't necessarily covered themselves in glory. There's been some issues about members of the, if you like, the federal parliament not being allowed to speak in their own language. So they want to secede from Denmark, but they do not want to join the EU. And there's some negotiations that will probably be sort of sped up about possible re-entering the European Union, because Greenland was the first country to actually leave the European Union, which they did in the 1980s. And now they're suddenly a bit scared, and they fear the Donald Trump juggernaut.
Yes, that's quite an interesting fact that you reminded us of. So what would the results mean in terms of a possible referendum? Would that hasten the process of this happening?
I think that the Demokraatit, the winning party, is in favour of independence, but just not yet. It's a bit like that Catholic saint who says, "I want chastity, just not yet." And it's a bit like that for Greenland's independence. They frankly don't have the money to become independent. They would need to increase their income by 100% to compensate for the block grant they currently get from Copenhagen. There are critical minerals in Greenland, but they are buried under 8 kilometers of ice in the best cases. So they would need to find a way of making money. So there's probably going to be a coalition with one of the parties that is currently in government will probably work with Demokraatit. There will then be a broad coalition, sort of centre-right, centre-left. They will then start negotiating with the Danes in order to then have a roadmap towards the referendum. But I think independence for Greenland is not likely to happen for the next 15 years. They would also want to know that they're protected, so that if they do become independent, that they don't just could be invaded by the Americans. There's a lot of animosity towards the Americans, I should say. The Americans have had a base in northern Greenland since the 1950s. It has now transpired that the Americans were digging holes in the glaciers where they wanted to put. They were known as missile worms, where they would try to sort of shoot nuclear missiles out. They didn't tell the Danes about it. They didn't tell the Greenlandic population about it. And actually, about 50 years ago, a plane crashed with a hydrogen bomb and contaminated the whole area. And I don't think Donald Trump is quite aware of how much animosity there is towards the Americans, because they basically didn't clean up the mess up.
Yes, so is that the word on the street that, they at no cost, I mean, we know politically the leaders have said what they said about America's, attempts to acquire Greenland, but what's the word on the streets? Do they, for now, happy with a gradual approach for a referendum and happy for relations with Denmark to remain as they are? And are they also, just like the politicians themselves, vehemently opposed to the US?
Everybody is pretty much, very, very small fringe would not be opposed to the American proposal. So that is a consensus. But the Demokraatit Party, which means the beacon, they would like independence as soon as possible, and they're probably quite unrealistic, I suppose we could say, about that independence sort of imminently, because it does cost money. It is tricky. Breaking up is hard to do, as the song goes, and that is true for creating new countries as well. So if we were to compare it to anything, it would probably be the Micronesia in the Pacific that had a sort of like a 30-year period where they became gradually independent from America, as it happens. And I think we would be looking at a similar situation in the case of Greenland.
And finally, Matt, how do you see Denmark trying to keep its hands firmly on its autonomous territory?
Well, Denmark actually passed a law, the Danish federal parliament passed a law called Selvstyre Law in 2008, which allowed for a referendum at the time of the Greenlandics choosing. So Greenland has been allowed, which is quite exceptional international law, allowed to organize a referendum when and if they choose. But then also part of that law is that the block grant that they get from Copenhagen will be gradually sort of scaled down as they start to stand on their own feet, as they start to getting an income from especially the minerals. And what has happened since 2008 is that very little has actually occurred. They have not gotten all those minerals out of the ground, and I think the Greenlandics were a bit too optimistic about that. So the Danish block grant is roughly the same as it was. They can't really make their own way, and the condition for independence, the condition for triggering this article for leaving Denmark, are just not there. Some of the parties, Nalabak, the smaller of the second largest party of the election, think that it doesn't matter, and they'll find a way. Find a way. I think that's a little bit like the Brexit idea in Britain, that it's much more difficult once you actually get to it. But it will be interesting to see.
Indeed, Matt Qvortrup, thank you so much for your time today, and appreciate your insights into Greenland. Thank you.
You're welcome.